Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Aaina Podcasts. In this episode, we're talking to Dhruva Desai, who's currently working at Azim Premji University. We talk about something that's perhaps neglected in mainstream education discussions, that is physical education. We talk about the different sources and influences that have shaped physical education in schooling, the various problems that we experience with it, and very importantly, what are some ways in which we can reimagine it. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Like and subscribe for more. Hi Dhruv, how are you doing?
Hi, good to see you both.
Good to see you and welcome to this podcast. We are really excited to talk to you. So Dhruv, could you introduce yourself very briefly? What do you do now and how did you get here?
Sure. So I'm currently working with a teacher education program at Azim Premji University in Bangalore. How I got here is, mostly a mystery to me. But most of the last 10, 12 years I've spent in schools as a teacher. So after that I left, feeling like I really enjoyed my time in the classroom, but I did not have a great experience in many other ways. So I went on to study education. And then after studying, after doing a master's in education, I thought, let me try exciting things, research and this and that. And shortly after that, realized that I enjoy being in classrooms much more. So I went back into teaching. And then after that, I've kind of, both from a natural itchy feetedness and from circumstances, I've moved and been in several different kinds of schools in different parts of the country over the last 8, 9 years. And so most recently, I was teaching in a small school in Himachal. And while I was there, I was kind of working on a few interesting kinds of things. I had this luxury of doing projects of my own along with my teaching. And one of those kind of brought me to where I am now, which was I had written and I was talking about, I was thinking about trying to do physical education a little bit differently. Just, purely out of my experiences with the students. I haven't really trained in that, so to say. And then someone read that and got in touch with me and said, we're trying to do sports and fitness a little bit differently here, and we're trying to incorporate that within education and also looking at doing physical education differently in the training of PE teachers. And so that's how I wound up at APU.
And were you always interested in physical education? So what drew you to it?
Yeah, so I guess myself personally, I was I played a lot. Basically, I was your classic backbencher rowdy boy in many ways, including but not limited to spending most of my time playing and on the playground. And so when I started teaching, for me, it was a very natural idea that as much fun is had on the playground as in the classroom. And so I started in different ways, in different spaces, trying to make that a part of my teaching. And for a long time, I think I had a quite not particularly well thought through, heavy fisted approach. I was like, playing is fun. Everyone likes playing. We should play. And I didn't think very much more about that. I would say, okay, today we are going to play, that kind of thing. It was much later, and it was after, especially being in a very different kind of school, in an alternative school, I started realizing that all physical education doesn't have to be competitive games and sports. And the other thing I realized was that not everyone has the same experience of it as I did and do still. And that's when I started. And again, like I said, I was in this very interesting small alternative school, and they had a very robust physical education program, which in fact wasn't even always thought of as a physical education program. We had, dance, and we had time spent outdoors as part of biology and, exploring and observing the outdoors. But all of that was also very much built into the physical development and education of the students there. And so that's why I then started thinking about these things and trying to bring that more into the rest of my classroom practice.
You mentioned that, like, realizing the difference between playing and physical education. So also wanted to ask, how would you define physical education and what all does it consist of?
Right, that's a tricky one, and I'm going to clarify at the outset that I am no one to define this. But what I can offer you is my understanding of it. So I suppose let me break it down, in terms of how education looks at it. PE can also be a subject. It is a subject unto itself, which is supposed to be via, as of the NCF 2005, it was supposed to be mandatory. CBSE insisted upon that, I think, in 2019, but almost no school still has PE as a mandatory subject. It can be chosen as a subject for class 11 and 12, or even for class 10 in certain boards. Outside of that, physical education in our schooling system is also considered a mandatory aspect of a child's time in school and that time with education. And it is broadly what many of us will have heard of as the games period. Now, what I understand of it is largely aligning with what the kind of stated goals are, which is the physical growth, development, and well being of the student. Many narratives around physical education and discourse around physical education will also add the word health. So, health and PE go together. There are some, I suppose, nitpicky objections to that also, to bringing in the idea of health. So, all this is a very long-winded way of saying that I think physical education is basically to do with the physical development of the child, just like we focus on the intellectual primarily and pay lip service to the emotional development of the child. Physical education is a big part of the overall development of the child, and I would say, in fact, it affords us the opportunities to engage with every aspect, cognitive, psychomotor, emotional, and so on, every aspect of the growth and development of the student.
So, I mean, I'm curious about something. So, in schools, we would associate physical education with, doing a bunch of exercises, right? How was that even figured out that these are the exercises that we need to do? Like, where does this curriculum come from, or this imagination of this is what you need to do to be fit and to work on all these physical capacities?
Some of it comes from sound understanding of human physiology and anatomy. A lot of it comes from myths and stories that have sustained themselves over years and years. And many of those stories have their roots in both industrialization and militarization of modern societies. So, especially things like, something that would be familiar to many Indian students is the idea of drill, out, up, out, forward, down, that kind of thing. That's very sort of quasi-militaristic. And I mean, sport generally is. You look at the Olympic opening ceremony, all of that is basically a military parade by each country. And students are taught the same thing. So schools that do take sports seriously will invariably have a march past with, where they turn right and salute to the chief guest and all of that. My own school had that. So a lot of it comes from the idea of disciplining the body. And that has its roots in both, the military industrial complex and just industrialization. And the rest of it, I would say, comes from our evolving engagements with sport. The sport most popular in your country or your area will invariably inform the physical education of your area or your curriculum. And it's very interesting in quiet ways, how the market also influences this without it being officially reflected in curricula. But how more and more schools will focus on cricket even more than they used to now that IPL has suddenly become a viable career option more than Ranji ever was in cricket, right? So yeah, I think it's a combination of all these things where our understanding comes from. And like so much in education, despite the best and worst intentions of people who design curriculum and textbooks and all of that, so much of it depends on the teacher. And so with PE in particular, I think one of the most interesting things is that so many of the teachers are ex-athletes. And so much of what happens in classrooms depends on their own experience. So someone who has played a lot of volleyball versus someone who has done athletics, track and field, versus someone who has played basketball versus someone who's played cricket, their PE classes will also reflect that to a large extent.
And is PE typically a part of teacher education programs? It is not, right? Yeah.
It is not. So one thing to think about is the fact that PE teachers have a different route to qualification altogether, right? So you don't need a B.Ed to teach PE. You need a B.Ped. The B.Ped itself is remarkable. So I mean, I haven't looked most recently, but a few years ago when I looked at kind of B.Ped curricula across the country, the B.Ped itself has barely any mention of pedagogy or of engaging with students. there's a lot of physiology, there's a lot of anatomy, there's a lot of the in-depth rules of various sports and sporting tournaments and the structure of sports in the country and so on. If there is any mention of pedagogy, it would be, one elective course maybe, which is wild when you think about it. Why are PE teachers not engaging with teaching?
But it also felt like the PA teacher's role was to discipline you, right? And not necessarily initiate you into some like, new knowledge, uh,
Yeah.
but to kind of, facilitate these exercises you do, keep you in line, you do your march past properly.
Yeah.
So the PE
Even more
teacher,
than that, I mean, very
yeah.
often, irrespective of the discipline of PE, the PT teacher's role is to discipline. Like if you come late to school, quite often you're sent to the PT teacher.
Yeah, my school had like a detention room briefly, which again, the military metaphor never stops. But at the same time, the in charge of the detention room was the PT teacher.
Yeah. They're also seen as the most kind of expendable by the school, right? Like so there's also the cultural hierarchy of, so arts and sports are constantly kind of fighting it out for bottom spot in our educational system. And so for many, those are the teachers that are most, they'll be sent for substitutions if nothing
Yeah.
else, regardless of whether they have a class at that time. It's okay, let the kids do art. You go where that other maths class is happening and a teacher is needed to invigilate a test, kind of thing. So yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you in the middle of your question.
No, no. I mean, just a comment. I know.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking that there was this weird kind of sympathy you would also feel for the PT teacher, right? I remember in my school, right? And it's because like we knew that the art teacher and the PT teacher were not accorded a status or a higher status by the school. So then even students had a sort of ironic relationship with some of these teachers. Like they wouldn't trust the authority of these teachers.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's why, and again, like the PT and art, the kind of larger social structures around it, invariably most of the arts teachers, whether visual or performing, would be women. And invariably PT teachers would be mostly men. And so how do these men who want authority in their space demand it? It's by taking on that kind of, again, militaristic, disciplinarian, very strict, stern, and often physically violent approach, right? That's the even crueler flip side of this PT teachers disciplinarian thing, that even in the most new age or modern of schools where corporal punishment is seen as an absolute no-no, it is still commonplace for there to be some amount of physical violence by the physical education teacher. Whether it is smacking people to correct their form and so on and so forth. And it's not just accepted, it's almost seen as a pedagogic strategy. That of course, I mean, tough love is absolutely needed when it comes to physical education. All the more so in schools that have this kind of coaching mentality to physical education.
You mentioned at the beginning that you were interested in rethinking physical education, but before we get to that, like, what do you think are the sort of fundamental problems with how physical education is imagined? You've already implied that, I think, in previous responses, but if you could just lay out what, according to you, are the fundamental issues, and then maybe go on to talk about how are you rethinking or critiquing or reimagining some of those things.
Also, just adding to that, would also like to know about the student experience of it because you have interacted with a range of students in and around this issue also. So, yeah, what are some problems there as well? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is hardly going to be comprehensive. But the first thing that comes to mind is one, just the status of physical education. It is not seen as an aspect of education. It is seen as something that also can happen in a school at best. Right? And very much this idea that you'll hear many teachers also saying that students can play anytime. This is the only place they can come to study, for instance. So I think my core issue with the way physical education is culturally seen and imagined right now, even if not on paper, is that it's just not seen as an aspect of education. And if and when it is only in the context of elite sports. So it is not a universal experience for students by any means. So we're at a stage where, for example, we will say that every student deserves and should have a basic level of maths and English, or maths and language, right? And we will also, we believe in universal education, in that up till 10th, everyone does have social science, science, maths, and so on. And that's when they specialize. We don't believe that about physical education, right? So that is, I think, a core kind of foundational issue. Then on top of that, there is the more specific issue that, and this ties into, Vrinda, what you were asking about the experience of students, which is that most students experience one of two versions of a PE class. Either it is, oh, it's just time where you can do what you want, which includes but is not limited to playing, or it is time where uh, you have been scouted as a person with talent and you are then being coached, right? So, and this to me is there is a major and foundational difference between coaching and teaching. Teaching is something that all students deserve, and that education is something that all students need. I'm not getting into elite sport. I have a personal opinion about it that will probably get me cancelled by a lot of my own colleagues and students. But be that as it may, there is a different place for it. If there's a place for it, it's a different place. It's not, the school experience is not for elite sport training, to my mind. The school experience is the place where we've promised students that you are going to get, a space and a curriculum and pedagogical intervention to help you grow and learn. So yeah, so students experience it in one of these two ways, and in the second way, that also applies to, maybe 5% of students. So for by and large, for most students, it's either this discipline space or it's like completely unstructured time. Now, unstructured time on the face of it is good and necessary, and it is. I do really believe that, but that can't be the only experience of PE, because then what that does is it allows many narratives and inequalities to stand unchallenged. So many of us would have seen the PE classroom where a certain group of boys, not even all boys, are playing in a very particular, aggressive, competitive way. And everyone else, people of all other genders, body types, are just hanging out. Some of them want to be a part of it, some of them want no part of it. And there's absolutely no teacher intervention with either side of this division. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I just wanted to add on something there. Like, it also becomes that space of masculine socialization, right? I mean, even for the boys who are feeling like, oh, I mean, I feel like in the PT class, or sometimes when we went to play football, it felt like, okay, there are these boys who can dominate that space, and I am not instinctively able to assert myself, but that was signaling to me that I need to get there somehow, right? I need to be able
yeah,
to do that. And there was some weird sense of awkwardness or shame about not being able to do that, right? And so, and again, like, then there are people who are just like in the corner, they're just huddling around, and immediately it feels like there's some status hierarchy is being created between the the people who can really play, who are the
yeah,
studly boys, and the other boys are just like hanging around feeling insecure.
yeah.
So yeah.
And it's so interesting also because it also speaks to what's happening in the rest of the school so often, because a lot of the time these boys who are this sportsies, so to speak, are also often academically not very strong and come from backgrounds where they are not prepared for the rigors of academia in that sense, whether in school or college or whatever. And so then again this becomes a space to reassert and to say that, okay, it's been established that there I'm, backbencher, loser, whatever. Here I'm the boss. And this is problematic at so many levels. And it also speaks to the complete bifurcation of the classroom and the playing space, or I should say the classroom and the physical education classroom. And that most teachers don't even realize this is happening because they don't engage with the playground at all, and the PE teacher has no idea about the other side of it, or if they do, they don't care. Yeah,
But I'm also thinking about this thing that, okay, if you are moderately good at it and there is someone better, then there is a certain status hierarchy being formed. But if you're really not good at it, where I was, and you're not even trying to be good at it, it's like with in terms of failing at other subjects or not scoring well or whatever the metric is, right? Not understanding something else, there was still shame I felt. With sports, it felt okay, almost to not be good. Like it's almost like this is not the category of
Yeah, exactly.
category of disciplines where one feels shame or pride. Like, of course, if you're good at it, you just are. And which, like, the thing that I feel most regret about in that sense is that then there's no notion of play, right? Either you're thinking about where you are in the competition, or you're just putting yourself out of it and not giving any weightage to the competition itself. So the idea of, oh, this can be fun and a learning experience both, that just never came to me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an entire aspect of life that so many people are missing out on, right? Their own embodiment, their engagement with their own physicality. And like you said, I mean, I can say more serious things about not engaging with embodiment, but fundamentally it's also fun, and it's an avenue of fun that everyone should get to access, and not everyone does. Like we were saying earlier, teachers say at home so they can play anyway. That's hardly true for so many people and for so many marginalized genders and communities.
Yeah.
Uh, and school is the place that can offer that, and it doesn't, and that's such a huge failure.
Yeah.
So, Dhruv, how are you like reimagining it, or what are you doing in your practice, or how should we reimagine, physical education?
So I have, as a school teacher, tried a number of small things. One is, in spaces where it's in my control, I can make sure that everyone participates. I can kind of extend this no opt out kind of philosophy that we have with so many other subjects. And speaking to what Brinda was saying a second ago, with other subjects, that shame would also come because there was intervention. I mean, shame is obviously not desirable, but what I'm saying is that whatever we feel, whether pride or shame or more reasonable versions of those emotions where you feel good about accomplishment or you feel like you need to accomplish something, there was no intervention with me. So the first thing that I'm trying to do is just to make sure that that is something we take seriously. Um, and so I can't speak to entire. There are broadly things that I wish we would do, but at least in the classroom, I think there's a couple of things we can do. One is all teachers should engage with the physical education aspect of schooling and the student school experience. And then we really need to be focusing on, like with any other subject, what are our learning outcomes? What are our objectives? What do we want out of this classroom? We want students to experience embodiment. Now, that is a vague term, but certain aspects of it can be locked down, right? We want students to think about their own bodies, to know how they feel about their body, to be able to assess whether they enjoy certain aspects, don't enjoy certain aspects, to be able to self assess, are they good at certain things, not good at certain things. We can also, I mean, there are in many places, including now in India and some documents, there are standards also for physical education, and we can work towards those. Um, Outside of that, I would also say that, like we were talking about, it should be an experience that everyone has and it should be fun for everyone. And so, physical education, now for me, one big part of the dominant narrative that I want to challenge is delinking it from sports. PE is not just sports. So, many of us, even when we say, okay, we are taking it seriously, what we're doing is we're teaching team sports. Uh, there is a place for team sports, definitely. There is I would argue, a more important place for collaborative sport, if such a thing does exist. And if it doesn't, then I would like to broaden the definition of sport. So, like as a very practical example, a small thing like rather than a football match where everyone is playing against each other, I've done smaller versions of the game where the whole team has a certain objective and a goal can only be scored when everyone has touched the ball X number of times and no one person has touched it for longer than X number of seconds. And you're playing against the clock to score a goal, right? It becomes a collaborative exercise while you still gain all the same skills of ball control and how to use your feet and how to assess the movement of the ball and so on. So we can change, the competitive and competitive aspect of it to some extent, and we can also broaden our definition of PE. So, for example, something that I'm doing more and more now, including in my work with the university, is to include within the ambit of the PE class, or in our case, the sports and fitness program, theater exercises, dance, yoga also to some extent, partly because it makes people happy, but also partly because there is value to it. Um, Collaborative games, So games that are in no way connected to sport. One of those games is, for example, the whole group together has to cross a certain hurdle, and it's only one when everyone has done it without failure. And all of these things achieve many of the, I would say, myths that we associate with sport, that are either myths or highly incomplete truths. Uh, Many of these are achieved much better by these other activities. So the goals of physical education are often achieved much better by activities that are not sport. So these are some of the ways I've been kind of thinking about it. The other thing to do, I think, the way to rethink it is to again remember that embodiment is not simply about the body, in a way that, embodiment is our tool to start breaking that notion of mind and body separation. uh, and so physical education and physical activities are also cognitive processes, they are also emotional processes. And how do we face up to those? So one of the things that I try to ensure that I'm doing, and that I would want all my students to also do, is talk to students about their experience of activities. So after you've played a game or after you've done a dance or whatever, have a debrief, have a conversation, create that space where people can share. And it's not that everyone will enjoy it immediately, but having that conversation and opening up that conversation gives us a space to start understanding why we enjoy it and why we don't, and why maybe we should do it anyway up to a certain point.
I think there are so many of these discourses, right, which are all related to one's own body, actually. Now that I think about it, like, there are part of the problems that are about the competitiveness and hierarchies, but there are so many things about how you define yourself, right, or how you're defined by others. Like, oh, I am just a sick child, right? Like, I fall sick often, or I'm just an injury prone child, I'm a weak child, or there are some students who are then like, oh, they're naturally fit and all, or better suited naturally to doing physical activities in school, and they would often also be more physically agile in the corridors, for example, not just in the sports, like whatever grounds. And I am thinking that the some of these delinking it from sports exercises or activities you mentioned, they do help you come out of that very rigid discourse category also in some ways. So you don't have to, like, yeah, like with the hurdle crossing thing, there's nothing you can say that ki, Acha, ye to I can't do, or
Yeah.
because I am so and so already. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking about that.
I mean, something I really enjoy. So I teach the sports and fitness minor, and we've been a little bit, I don't know, for various reasons. Our the messaging has been such that over the years the popularity has grown, but it is also a certain reflection of students. So there's a lot of like sports boys, for lack of a better catch-all, right? And one of my favorite things with this group is the first time they come into class and they realize that I'm going to teach them dance, and that they're going to have to dance for not just the next 5 minutes, but for the next 1.5 hours and every day of that week. And I'm going to make them practice it in the same way that I would do like a football drill or a frisbee drill or anything like that. And engaging with that notion, and then them realizing that, so this serves so many, it serves so many goals, right? One, it opens up this conversation about the body, for instance. No, I'm not going to dance. Why? And this is a conversation we can have. uh, Secondly, the fact that despite having probably played football since I was age 4 or whatever, I am utterly unable to coordinate in this moment. And people who have been seen as unathletic, who are also in the sports and fitness minor course, are suddenly getting a chance to shine. Which is not to make this a discourse of everyone is brilliant at something, but it is a way to just talk about how embodiment is different, not just for different people, but also for the same person across different disciplines, right? I might be the most graceful swimmer in the world, but I absolutely cannot do the simplest of dance moves. Why is that? There is such a thing as, our, or I mean, bodily intelligence, not in the very limiting Howard Gardner sense of it, but there is an aspect of bodily intelligence as well in everything we do. And this is a way to open up that conversation. And of course, the last part of it is that it's a brilliant tool, both, dance, and we do various things and some theater activities and some art activities as well. These are really good ways to open up conversations about inequality. So this is like a way to make the PE classroom also a critical pedagogy space.
Yeah. No, that I really liked the fact that there are conversations happening, after the activity or before the activity. And you're constantly having to reflect on what is this all about? What does this mean? What am I feeling? Uh, because again, like in sort of the normative physical education that we have experienced, um, yeah, there was just no space for that. However, there was still an internalization of values and of orientation and ways of relating to others and thinking of, what my body is. So that was anyway happening. So there were certain kinds of embodiment, being produced or conceived like through
Yeah.
physical education, but we never talked about it, and thus we couldn't like critically, disrupt, what it was becoming, right?
Exactly. There's no space to challenge the status quo. It just gets
Yeah.
reproduced.
Yeah. I would also want to hear what have been some of the outcomes, if you have to use that language, or some of the effects of this process of rethinking physical education, doing all these different types of activities, having these conversations. So, what has happened, right, to your students? How do you think they now, yeah, like talk about it?
So I'll first start with what's happened for me. One of the things that happened for me is, and this is what I was worried about saying earlier and getting cancelled, is that I really think that we should not have elite sport. It should not exist. I really struggle to see any positive outcome of it. And I'll leave it there just to give people plenty of ammunition. But
If I may just like add on, it's like, I have this problem with singing in the sense ki, when you have this idea of like elite singing, you have to sing for competitions, it completely discourages most of the population from thinking that they can sing. Whereas singing
exactly.
should be this democratic activity that everybody participates in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like everything should be, right?
Yeah,
Like dance
everything,
and
yeah.
music and I mean this is a highly unformed, unscientific theory, but I feel like too many things have learned from the post-industrialization success of sport as a field.
Yeah.
And so we've turned everything into a competition. Music has become competition, dance has become competition, now cooking is also a competition, I believe. Everything has become competition, and this is maybe it's just because of my bias, but I think that sport has led to this. Like sport has provided a model that other disciplines have been able to draw from, but I really don't know which came first.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. So you were asking about outcomes for students. I think there are some immediate short-term outcomes we definitely see both at school and in the university here. At a school level, we see people, like I'll put it this way, we see a lot of students thinking twice. So the more traditionally sporty kinds of kids, I see them thinking twice or thrice about why they are only always passing to the other boys who have always played. So even so, or let me zoom out a bit more. The main thing that I see is that more people participate, and that a few of those people get to experience the fun of it and find something new that they enjoy doing. That's a very base level and something I'm very happy about. And then within that, there's also this notion that I was saying that people think twice or thrice. They will work. Many of the students, as they see the social impact that it's having on their classmates and their peers, they will work to include their classmates and peers more. Uh, in schools, by and large, I've only seen this in the light of, okay, there will be one space for everyone to play, and we'll have a separate elite boys playing group, which for now is good enough for me. I'm not yet able to I'm not yet able to convince other people that elite sports is a bad idea. Uh, and then with the university students, actually, I think it goes much deeper because the course is designed in such a way that we want them to think about a lot of these things. And I haven't really gotten into the course itself, but we talk about many things. We talk about how the body holds trauma and stress. Uh, and we look at embodiment broadly in two ways. One is how the body is also involved with learning. It's not just the mind, and so to challenge this mind body separation, and the idea of knowing your own body. Something that we've been trying to work on a lot is the fact that and however much medicine and science advances, the fact of everybody being unique is only being further reiterated. The more we learn, the more we realize that everything doesn't work for everyone. And I mean, we haven't gotten into all the medical and health myths. But so with the university students, we're able to talk about, for example, challenging this idea of BMI, for instance, something that many of us have grown up with in our generation, and the students now continue to. That BMI is a good indicator of certain things, such as heart related risks. Now, actually, research has shown for decades, but it's just not been talked about, that that just only applies to a certain white body, if that. It just doesn't apply to many other ethnicities and races. So we are able to have these conversations, and we're able to broaden the understanding of both health and the body, and I think crucially with this age group, self-image also.
Yeah.
We're really able to talk about that. We work a lot of reflection into our courses, and so we really see it in their own words. We see what these courses are able to do for them. Now, what I can't speak to is how long that will last. I don't know yet. I can only hope when it comes to that. But definitely in the immediate term, similar, like I was saying earlier, these a lot of these people who have never before danced really get a chance to say, actually, this is also really fun. And people who've never before played anything and who will share that why they haven't played is because they've always been made to feel that their body is not right for playing, will say that actually now I will play, and I will encourage other people to do the same, whether it is with community work or informally or whatever.
So Dhruv, it also feels like, a lot of this is inventive, right? You are also figuring out different ways of doing this. But I mean, this might be useful to understand just from again a normative institutional point of view, that if you have to design this kind of a curriculum, an alternative curriculum of physical education, how should one go about it, right? What kind of topics do you put in? How much of it is just, I don't know, content, theory, reading, or do we not do that and we sort of do it through activities? And where do we source those activities from? Because if, let's say, the normative imagination is, again, drawing from all these problematic, military industrial sort of metaphors and histories, we really don't have an imagination then of what to do differently. So yeah, if you can provide some suggestions as to how can one go about even designing such an alternative curriculum.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll come back to something I said a little while earlier is first just to take it seriously in the way that we would take every other curriculum, right? Like, so what are our objectives? So to definitely do it in an organized manner. Just because embodiment could be a slightly vague term and because we are talking about having fun and playfulness, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have objectives. So that's, I would say, one big part of it in doing it in an organized manner. So for a curriculum. Then, in terms of resources, that's a tricky one because there are few good collections of these. A lot of things exist, but not in very sort of organized manner. So one thing I would suggest to anyone who is doing this kind of thing is to look beyond, to think about what all involves embodiment, and to look at resources from those spaces. So that includes work in ecology, going outdoors, walks, hikes. That includes, like we've talked about, dance, music, theater, even the learning of an instrument. I know a lot of people who do embodied work with percussion. And, there's a whole literature and body of work around that, using percussion in embodied work. So those are some of the places we can draw from, and there are resources that have worked with collaborative games, cooperative games, and so on. In terms of research and theory and so on, I think there should be some like reading when it comes to the body as well. But of course, I would say a minimum of 50%, but ideally more, should be actual physical activity of all these kinds. And that's how we have over here, we try to do it as well. We have this, like, our idea is, the idea that we run our courses on is practice first, theorize later. So even if we're teaching anatomy, for example, which our students do need to learn, we'll do workouts, and then we'll talk to them about, like, okay, so where it's hurting a lot, that's your tricep, right? And when you go down to this extent in doing a squat and you come up, you do that 20 times, you'll realize that only the front of your thighs is hurting. Those are your quads. But if you go down to a certain deeper extent, you'll realize your glutes or the muscles in your bum, those also have to start activating and firing. And so through practice, we are able to teach this theory as well. And within any kind of embodied practice, I think that's crucial because like with any teaching, you want the people who are teaching to know how the learner experiences it, right? So with our students here who we hope will do embodied work, we want them to have experienced it as well. We also experience all of this. One of our colleagues takes us through some truly brutal workouts before before we teach these anatomy and physiology courses. So I would say definitely more activity or at least as much activity, but also some amount of reading and discussion. And again, debrief, right? So debrief everything, talk about everything, break it down, why we are doing it, how we feel about it, what it says to us about ourselves, what it says to about us about each other, and how do we move forward from there. So any physical practice, I think, should have a strong reflection component.
Dhruv, I have like one final question from my end, and then Vrinda can also ask. I was thinking like a skeptic while you were answering the last question. And I was thinking from the point of view of a person, could be a student in a school or college, who doesn't have access to this alternative structure and imagination or practices, right? Like, and they think that, okay, this is too like tedious, taxing. And as you said, like some workouts are brutal or they're very, very, exhausting. And so it's difficult to sustain motivation. So what would you tell such a person like about the general, I guess, importance of physical participation or activity, and for somebody who's not looking to be good at sports or perhaps is getting discouraged or disincentivized because of that, right? How could they actually, I don't know, like physically participate more or engage with their body more? Like, yeah. And this is just just to like draw out the stakes of, I think, what we're talking about, which is the importance of something like physical education.
Yeah. So I think, there's a lot written and talked about and said now about the importance of working with the body and health itself. And I think people have access to that perhaps too much. Like, so this Instagram kind of, some of it is good and some of it is pseudoscience, all the stuff that you're constantly bombarded with. What I would say in terms of actually doing it is, I guess I would say find something that you do enjoy and pursue that. So it doesn't have to be sport and it doesn't have to be a workout. It could be running, it could be swimming, it could be dancing, it could be just playing badminton with your friend, it could be doing relay races. There are so many things. So find something that you enjoy doing that gets you to move. And so again, like if I was, if I had access to this hypothetical person, I would try to push it in a way that uses the thing they enjoy as a gateway. But failing that, and just as a one thing to say, I would say definitely find something you do and then keep pushing yourself to get better at that. Because the idea of getting better at something is learning. And as we are learning, I think that very often acts as a kind of de facto gateway into, so with embodiment, it acts as a gateway into other kinds of things. So once I have, been swimming long enough, maybe at some point I'll find that I also enjoy cycling. Or just once I have enjoyed dancing enough, I might find another form of dance that I really enjoy. So yeah, I would say just find something that you enjoy doing and do that, because experiencing success is such a big part of learning, right? You're not going to stick with anything if you don't get to experience success in it. So and enjoyment is an aspect of success. So you have to enjoy something, and when you are successful at it, you enjoy it, and you have to enjoy it to get successful at it. Yeah. I mean, it's not very convincing, I know, but that's the best I can come up with right now.
No, but as a till very recently unconvinced person, Shayan knows this much more. But I have been very resistant to anything physical for a very long time, and I'm okay at it. So I am active as a person, but for the first 2 years of PhD, I think मेरा था कि JNU में तो walk हो जाती है ना, why should I do anything else? आते जाते चल लेते हैं. But the thinking of enjoyment as part of success, right? I think that's very important because for the longest time, what I have done is like fully dealing that, right? So not thinking of success as something that is a condition for enjoyment, but that is also not satisfying, right? You have to think of enjoyment as a goal or fulfillment in and of itself, which also relates to like some different markers of success, right? Like I might like be very slow at learning something like swimming. I might be doing it slowly, slower than all other groups I'm a part of, but that I am getting better, or that there are things I'm learning about my body
Yeah.
which are independent of enjoyment. So it's just like it comes under that category of broad, like moving ahead, right? So you're learning something more, you're also like more alive to certain things. Like after like yeah, many years of being on this earth, I realize that I tend to trip more when I'm not working out, like just trip on surfaces more or like on edges more. Once again, not like a foolproof understanding of anything, might be absolutely bogus, but made the connection at least.
No, no,
So
I think it's very real. And there is some amount of research that would support what you're saying. There's this
yeah.
idea of proprioception,
Hmm.
our understanding of our own body, which basically all the research is saying this. The more you do anything,
Yeah.
the more your awareness in other spheres also.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, good. Feeling validated. But yeah, so I didn't have any other questions though. So, if there's something else that you feel like we missed out on or you missed out on and you would want to add.
But one thing I really wanted to say, and your both of what you just said just triggered that for me, and I'm surprised I haven't mentioned it, is community. Embodiment is a community practice historically through the ages and for so many of us. And so again, to the skeptic viewing, I would also say find something you enjoy doing with other people. Make it a social activity. You'll be shocked at how much of the resistance fades in the face of the social nature of the activity. So even, and there's a reason why even activities that are classically individual, like going for a run or rock climbing or golf or whatever. I mean, golf is barely physical activity, but there is a reason that even this me versus the course kind of thing is enjoyed and participated in so much more in community. Why do running clubs exist, and why are people more likely to show up for a run rather than to go running solo, right? And when you go climbing in a rock climbing gym or outdoors or whatever, like these kinds of things that are happening in cities more, why is it that it's so much of it is a social aspect of it, right? Other climbers who you get to know there, or you go with someone. Any kind of embodied activity, I would say, is more fun in community. That doesn't always have to be the case for every single person, but in many cases, it does add a lot to the experience. And I think that that is another affordance of the physical education classroom. It more than anything else I have ever experienced, it has helped me build community amongst the students I work with, and for me also to feel a part of that community. And that is really something that again I forgot to mention. But when you were saying how does this result in change for the students I've worked with, this is a huge one. I hinted at it talking about the social aspect, but them coming together as a group, nothing does it more than collective embodied action, whether dance or going for a hike or camping or just playing anything. Yeah.
No, thank you, Dhruv, for all those really wonderful thoughts. I mean, I'll add to Vrinda, it was validating, and I'm sure a lot of people who would hear it would also find it validating. Because there is just value in your own body and how you understand your body and what you want to do with it, right? And I think like your both critique and reimagination I really think it helps think of the body as more agentive, as having more agency to do different kinds of things. And I think this conversation also has given us a lot of pointers as to what are the elements that we really need to rethink in physical education. How do we de-link it from normative structures, from disciplining structures, from militaristic structures, as well as elite sports, very importantly, let's not forget that. So thank you, Dhruv, and yeah, we hope to talk to you again sometime.
Yes. Thank you both so much.